The first chill of November bit at Ben Carter's nose as he trudged along the muddy bank of Hollow Creek. The recent rain had swelled the water, leaving puddles glinting like scattered glass across the ground. Leaves, still golden and red in spots despite the season's lean toward brown, floated on the surface, spinning lazily in little eddies. Ben pulled his scarf tighter around his neck and glanced at the bare trees lining the creek. Their skeletal branches scratched the gray sky, and a faint mist hovered over the water, curling in little ghostly shapes. The air smelled of wet earth, damp wood, and the faint smoke drifting from the chimneys of the houses on the far side of the creek. He knelt by the water's edge, poking at a loose branch with his boot. This had become his favorite routine lately, wandering the creek after storms, searching for something he didn't quite know. He liked the quiet, liked the way the world seemed to pause, waiting for him to notice. And today, the world had something to show him. Something glinted beneath the water. He leaned closer, squinting through the ripples. At first, he thought it was just a shiny rock, but then the reflection caught the dull gray sky in a way that didn't seem quite right. Curious, he waded a little closer and knelt on the muddy bank. His fingers brushed against smooth, cold metal. He pulled it out and froze. It was a pocket watch, old and ornate, the kind his grandfather sometimes told stories about, with a delicate engraving on the back. Ben opened it carefully. Inside, the hands ticked, but in reverse. The second hand spun backward, steady and relentless. Engraved on the inside lid were two letters, EW, and beneath them, a phrase that made Ben's stomach flip. When time can't be turned, let kindness turn instead. He held the watch in both hands, feeling its weight, feeling the strange pulse of the backward ticking. It was beautiful and impossible all at once, like the world had hidden a secret just for him. Ben's curiosity surged. Why would someone leave this here? Who was EW, and what did the engraving mean? He pocketed the watch and stood up, glancing back at the creek. The leaves drifted lazily, the mist curled and lingered, and the world went on as if nothing unusual had happened at all. But Ben knew differently. Something had shifted in Hollow Creek that morning, and he had a feeling it was just the beginning. He pulled his jacket tighter, took a deep breath of the cold, damp air, and started home, the weight of the watch pressing lightly against his chest, a small, ticking heartbeat of a mystery waiting to be solved. By the time Ben reached his grandfather's house, the sun had dipped low in the early November sky, painting the clouds in muted shades of gold and gray. The air was sharper now, carrying the scent of wood smoke and damp leaves, and the crunch of fallen foliage under his boots made him smile. "Grandpa, you won't believe what I found," Ben called as he opened the door. Henry Carter looked up from the armchair where he'd been repairing a loose cabinet hinge. His gray hair was slightly mussed, and his glasses slid down his nose. "What did you find, Ben?" Ben dug into his pocket and pulled out the watch. The metal glinted in the warm glow of the fireplace. Henry's eyes widened just a fraction. He pushed his glasses up and leaned closer. "Where did you get that?" "From Hollow Creek. It was in the water. Look, it ticks backward, and there's an engraving. EW, and..." Ben paused. "Odd. It says, when time can't be turned, let kindness turn instead." Henry sat back slowly, his expression a mix of surprise and something deeper, something that made Ben's stomach tighten. "That watch," Henry said finally, his voice low. "I haven't seen one like that in decades. That belonged to Edwin Ward, the old clockmaker from Hollow Creek." Ben blinked. "The clockmaker? Grandpa, you mean the guy people say disappeared 100 years ago?" Henry nodded. "That's the one. Brilliant man, but obsessive, they said. He loved his wife more than anything. When she got sick, he became obsessed with finding a way to turn back time, to save her. That was the last anyone ever saw of him. The workshop's still there, at the edge of town, though no one goes near it anymore." Ben felt a shiver, not from the cold, but from excitement. "Do you think this watch is connected to him?" Henry leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees. "I don't know, but if it is, Ben, you need to be careful. Edwin Ward was a kind man, but he was consumed by his work at the end. And that workshop, well, it has a way of keeping secrets." Ben's fingers curled around the watch. The ticking was steady, insistent, almost as if it wanted him to do something. "I have to see it, Grandpa. I have to know what this is all about." Henry studied his grandson, a faint smile tugging at his lips despite his worry lines. "I thought you might say that. Just promise me you'll be careful. And remember, sometimes it's not about what the clock can do, but what we do with the time we're given." Ben nodded, heart racing. He could feel it. This was no ordinary find. Something about this watch, about Edwin Ward, about Hollow Creek itself, was calling him. And he had a feeling that this early November morning was only the beginning of a story that would change everything. Outside, the wind rustled through the trees, carrying the crisp, damp scent of falling leaves. The creek glimmered in the fading sunlight, like a secret waiting to be discovered. Ben clutched the watch a little tighter. He didn't know what lay ahead, but he knew one thing: he was ready. The next morning, Ben set out for the Willow Hollow Library, the air still crisp with early November frost. The trees along Main Street were a riot of amber and gold, leaves clinging stubbornly to the branches before tumbling lazily to the ground. The scent of damp earth mingled with the faint aroma of burning wood from nearby chimneys, giving the whole town a cozy, almost magical feeling. The library's brick walls were decorated with pressed leaves and autumn garlands, remnants from a small early November harvest festival. Inside, the warm, musty smell of books wrapped around Ben like a blanket, and he immediately felt at ease. "Good morning," called a soft voice from behind the circulation desk. He looked up and saw a woman with dark hair streaked with silver, glasses perched on her nose, and a quiet, thoughtful smile. "Hi, I'm looking for information about Edwin Ward," Ben said, holding up the pocket watch. The librarian's eyes widened slightly at the engraving. "Edwin Ward, that's a name that doesn't come up often. And is that a pocket watch?" She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where did you find it?" "By Hollow Creek. I think it belonged to him." The librarian hesitated for a moment, then smiled gently. "You must be Ben Carter. I've heard about your grandfather." "I'm Clara Ward. Edwin Ward was my great-grandfather." Ben's jaw dropped. "Really?" Clara nodded, pushing her glasses up the bridge of her nose. "I know it sounds strange. Our family has a complicated history with him. He was brilliant, but some say obsessed. He spent years working on a clock that could, well, supposedly reverse time. He disappeared before he could finish it. People in town still whisper about it every November, when the leaves turn and the air feels heavier, like the world itself remembers him." Ben felt a shiver, not from the cold, but from excitement. "Do you think this watch is part of it?" Clara examined the watch carefully, tracing the engravings with her finger. "It's possible. He was meticulous with his inventions. If he created a timepiece meant to guide people somehow, it wouldn't surprise me if he hid it where someone could find it later." And here you are. Together, Ben and Clara dug through old blueprints, letters, and photographs in the library's archives. The room smelled of aging paper and ink, of dust stirred by their careful handling of centuries-old documents. Clara pointed out diagrams showing clock mechanisms, some simple, others impossibly intricate. Ben traced his finger over a sketch of a large clock, its face frozen at 3:17. "This matches the time on the tower clock in town," he whispered. Clara's eyes softened. Yes, that time always seemed meaningful. Nobody knew why. Perhaps Edwin left it as a marker, a puzzle, or a reminder of what mattered most. Ben felt a thrill run through him. This wasn't just a story from long ago, it was alive. The watch, the clock, the creek, and now Clara herself, all of it was pointing toward something. Something that needed him to see it through. Outside, a gust of wind sent a shower of leaves tumbling down Main Street, rattling against the library windows. Ben glanced out at the November day, golden and crisp, and knew that this was only the beginning. He tucked the watch safely in his pocket, ready to discover Edwin Ward's secrets, and maybe, just maybe, understand what it meant for the time he had in his own life. By mid-morning, the sun had climbed higher in the pale early November sky, but its warmth did little to chase away the chill. Ben's breath came in visible puffs as he pedaled his bike along the winding road that led to the edge of town. Bare trees stretched over the path, their branches scratching the gray sky, and the ground was carpeted with a thick layer of golden and crimson leaves. Ahead, the workshop loomed, Ward Clockworks, long abandoned, its once bright white paint now peeling in gray. The windows were clouded with dust, some cracked, and the heavy wooden door sagged slightly on its hinges. A chill wind rattled the loose boards. Ben parked his bike and approached cautiously, heart hammering with excitement. He felt the weight of the pocket watch in his pocket, a steady, backward heartbeat, as if it were urging him forward. He pushed the door open. It creaked loudly, echoing through the empty space. Inside, the air smelled of cold metal, dust, and the faint lingering scent of old oil. Everywhere he looked, there were clocks frozen mid-tick, some large enough to dominate the room, others tiny and delicate, like treasures waiting to be discovered. Ben's eyes fell on a massive grandfather clock in the center of the room. Its hands were frozen at 3:17, the same time he had seen on the town clock. He set the pocket watch on a nearby table. Almost imperceptibly, the giant clock's minute hand shivered, moving forward a single tick, then stopped again. He bent over a workbench, brushing away dust to reveal blueprints and sketches. They depicted elaborate mechanisms, gears within gears, and notes scribbled in Edwin Ward's careful hand. One page showed a clock with an engraving identical to the one inside the pocket watch. "This is incredible," Ben whispered to himself, tracing the lines of the sketch. He could almost feel Edwin's presence, the careful attention, the hope, the heartbreak woven into the designs. A sudden gust rattled the windows, sending a shower of dry leaves across the floor. Ben jumped, then laughed softly. "November really knows how to make an entrance," he muttered. He stayed for what felt like hours, examining the clocks, the plans, the tiny details Edwin had left behind. And the watch in his pocket seemed to pulse in rhythm with the frozen time around him, urging him to understand. Finally, as the shadows grew longer and the chill deepened, Ben reluctantly stepped outside. He glanced back at the workshop, its windows dark and mysterious, the late November light catching on the peeling paint and fallen leaves. This place held secrets, secrets of time, grief, love, and kindness, and Ben knew he was only beginning to uncover them. Clutching the pocket watch, he felt a thrill of anticipation. Whatever Edwin Ward had left behind, it was waiting for him to find. And Ben was ready. The next morning, early November's chill lingered in the air, and the wind rattled the remaining golden leaves on the trees. Ben walked along the streets of Hollow Creek, the pocket watch warm against his palm. Its backward ticking was steady, almost insistent, as if it wanted him to notice something he hadn't yet understood. He met Clara Ward at the library, where she had pulled out more blueprints, letters, and photographs from her great-grandfather's archives. Together, they pored over the intricate drawings, discovering patterns and markings that suggested the watch wasn't just a timepiece, it was a guide. "It's like he left clues," Clara said softly, tracing her finger over one page. "Not to reverse time, but to help people do something, maybe something that matters. Look at these notes, correct a mistake, restore a moment, kindness as measure." Ben felt a shiver. "Kindness as time? You mean like, the watch ticks forward when someone does something good?" Clara nodded. "I think that's exactly it. Edwin Ward may have realized too late that time itself can't fix grief. But kindness, that can. That's what the watch is meant to remind us." Ben grinned, already thinking of his first opportunity. Down the street lived Mrs. Calder, an elderly neighbor who struggled to rake her yard every fall. The leaves were thick and wet with November rain. Ben offered to help, the watch in hand and Clara following along. As he gathered the leaves, he noticed something odd. The watch's backward ticking slowed, then, just for a moment, ticked forward. It was faint, but unmistakable. He looked at Clara, whose eyes widened in surprise. "See?" Ben said, smiling. "It works." Throughout the day, Ben found other small ways to help, carrying groceries for Mr. Jameson, fixing a loose board for the community center, leaving a warm note for a friend who'd been sad. Each act made the watch tick forward a little more, a heartbeat of kindness measured in mechanical pulses. By evening, the golden November light was fading fast, casting long shadows over the streets. The air was crisp, smelling of damp leaves and wood smoke. Ben paused near Hollow Creek, the water glimmering in the late afternoon sun, and watched a leaf drift across the surface. He realized, with a warm rush in his chest, that this was more than a puzzle. It was a way to connect, to make a difference, to understand that even in loss and grief, he could shape the future. Clara's voice broke his reverie. "Ben, I think Edwin left this watch for someone who could understand that. Not to change the past, but to make the present count." Ben smiled, looking down at the ticking watch. It had stopped moving backward. For the first time, it seemed like the world itself was waiting, holding its breath, and he had the chance to make every tick matter. November's chill had deepened, and the wind rustled the leaves once more. But for the first time that day, Ben felt warmth, not just from the watch, but from the knowledge that time, measured in kindness, could truly move forward. Early November mornings had a quiet magic in Hollow Creek. Mist curled over the creek's surface, and the chill in the air made Ben pull his jacket tighter as he walked to the Ward clockworks once more, this time with Clara by his side. Their footsteps crunched on the wet leaves, sending a spray of amber and gold into the crisp air. Clara had brought a small flashlight and gloves, and Ben carried the pocket watch carefully in his pocket, feeling its gentle tick against his palm. The abandoned workshop, with its peeling white paint and dusty windows, loomed ahead like a relic frozen in time. Inside, the smell of old metal and oil greeted them. They moved quietly, scanning the shelves and workbenches where clocks stood frozen mid-tick. Clara's eyes landed on a large, half-finished wall clock. Something about its frame seemed unusual, and she pulled a small hammer from her bag. "Help me with this panel," she said. Together, they removed the wooden cover and discovered a small hidden compartment behind the gears. Inside lay a folded piece of yellowed paper. Clara's hands shook slightly as she opened it, revealing neat, careful handwriting. "Edwin Ward, to the one who finds what I could not fix, time cannot undo what has been lost. Grief cannot be erased, and mistakes cannot be undone. But there is a way to make the world right, even if only a little. Each act of kindness, each thoughtful gesture, is a tick forward. That is how we heal. That is how time truly moves. I leave this watch for you, not to turn back the hours, but to remind you that love and care matter more than any clock." Ben read the words aloud, his voice barely above a whisper. A warmth spread through him, mingling with the November chill that clung to the corners of the workshop. Clara wiped a tear from her cheek. He wanted someone to understand, to keep living with purpose, to help people, even in small ways. That's why he left this watch. Ben felt a lump in his throat. He thought of his father, of the quiet moments they had shared before he passed, and of the little ways he could honor that memory. So that's it. That's why it ticks forward when we do good things. It's measuring kindness? Yes, Clara said softly. Not to reverse grief, but to give hope. To remind us that even if time can't be turned, we can make things better. Outside, a faint wind rattled the broken windows, carrying the earthy scent of damp leaves. The late November sun cast long, golden shadows across the dusty floor, illuminating the hidden letter like a tiny beacon. Ben clutched the pocket watch, feeling its backward tick slow, as if acknowledging the truth they had uncovered. For the first time, the mystery of Edwin Ward felt complete, not with an answer about time itself, but with a reminder that the present, shaped by acts of care and love, was more powerful than anything he could have imagined. He looked at Clara. "We have to show people. The town needs to know what he meant." Clara nodded. "Yes, but first, let's make sure the watch stays safe. It's November, Ben, the month of change, and maybe, just maybe, it's time for us to start something new." Ben slipped the watch into his pocket again, the tick now feeling like a heartbeat he could understand. November had deepened around them, the misty creek outside, the golden leaves scattered across the floor, and for the first time, he felt truly ready to follow Edwin Ward's lessons. The sky had darkened by mid-afternoon, a thick gray blanket rolling over Hollow Creek. Early November winds whipped through the trees, rattling the remaining amber and crimson leaves like a drumroll announcing something important. The air was sharp and biting, carrying the scent of wet earth and distant wood smoke. Ben tightened his jacket and pulled the hood over his head as he cycled toward the creek. He had an uneasy feeling in his stomach, a mixture of excitement, fear, and anticipation. Something about the way the wind howled through the bare branches felt like a warning. When he reached the creek, the water had risen since his last visit. Waves lapped hungrily against the banks, carrying flotsam of sticks, leaves, and debris. And there, at the spot where he had first found the pocket watch, the current swirled faster, darker, more insistent. Ben's heart raced. He dismounted and approached cautiously, the watch warm against his palm. "I just need to make sure it's safe," he whispered to himself, his voice almost drowned by the roar of the wind. Just then, Henry's voice cut through the storm. "Ben, wait." Ben looked up and saw his grandfather running toward him, boots slipping on wet leaves. "Be careful, the creek's dangerous in this wind." But before Ben could respond, his foot slipped on the muddy bank. He grabbed at a branch, but it snapped under his weight, and he tumbled forward, arms flailing. Water surged around his knees, icy and relentless. The pocket watch tumbled from his grasp, landing on a slick rock in the middle of the current. Henry was there in an instant, grabbing Ben's jacket and pulling him to safety. Both were soaked, shivering, but safe. Ben looked down at the watch, still perched precariously. With a swift, careful motion, Henry reached in and recovered it, handing it back to Ben. Ben's hands shook as he held it. The backward ticking had stopped completely. The storm seemed to acknowledge the moment, the wind screaming and leaves whipping around them like a chaotic applause. "It's okay," Henry said, wrapping his arm around Ben's shoulders. "Sometimes the current shows us what really matters. And sometimes, we need a little help to hold on." Ben nodded, breathing hard. He realized that the watch wasn't about controlling time. It wasn't about magic or power. It was about guidance, acts of kindness, connection, and love. The storm raged for a few more minutes, then began to ease. Rain turned to a gentle drizzle, and the clouds thinned, letting the weak November sun glimmer through. Hollow Creek returned to its usual pace, calmer now, glinting in the soft light, golden leaves floating lazily downstream. Ben clutched the watch in his pocket, feeling its rhythm settle like a heartbeat. He glanced at his grandfather. "I think I finally understand. It's not about what the watch can do, it's about what we do with the time we have." Henry smiled, letting Ben's words hang in the cool November air. "Exactly, Ben, you've got it. Now let's get home before we freeze." Together, they walked back along the creek, the storm leaving a quiet, reflective calm behind. The trees, stripped of many leaves but still magnificent, stood sentinel over the water. And for the first time, Ben felt the weight of the watch not as a mystery, but as a guide, a reminder that even in the midst of a storm, kindness could move the world forward. The morning after the storm, Hollow Creek was transformed. Early November frost glittered on the grass and rooftops, and the air smelled of wet leaves, wood smoke, and the quiet hope that comes after a storm. The creek itself had calmed, its surface reflecting the gray-gold light of the sun that fought through lingering clouds. Ben and Clara carried the pocket watch and Edwin Ward's hidden letter to the town museum, their footsteps crunching on frost-tipped leaves along Main Street. The streets were quiet, save for the occasional resident sweeping leaves or carrying firewood. There was a sense of anticipation in the air, as though the town itself had been waiting for this moment. Inside the museum, they placed the watch and the letter in a carefully prepared display. Clara adjusted the lighting, letting the early November sun illuminate the engraved words inside the pocket watch. "This is perfect," she said softly. "It's as if he wanted everyone to see it, not just us." Ben nodded. He thought of the small acts of kindness he had done, the warmth they had left behind, and the knowledge that the watch had ticked forward with each one. "It's more than just a story," he said. "It's a reminder. That time isn't about the past, it's about what we do with it now." Clara smiled, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. "Exactly, Edwin Ward wanted people to understand that. And now they will." Outside, a soft breeze rattled the remaining leaves, and then something miraculous happened. From the tower clock at the center of town, long frozen at 3:17, came a deep, resonant chime. 1, 2, 3, then the full sequence, echoing across Hollow Creek for the first time in decades. People paused in the streets, looking up in wonder. The sound was steady, deliberate, comforting. It was as if the town itself had sighed, relieved, remembering a rhythm it had lost long ago. Ben's eyes shone. "It worked," he whispered. "It really worked." Henry, standing beside him, clapped a hand on his shoulder. "Not the watch, Ben. You did it, you understood. That's what makes the difference." As residents slowly gathered, curious about the sound of the long silent clock, Ben felt a warm glow spread through him. Early November sunlight gleamed on the frost-covered rooftops and glinted off the scattered leaves on the streets. The town was alive in a way it hadn't been for decades, connected, reminded, and healed by small acts of care and the story of a man who had understood the true measure of time. November was still young, the month of change and reflection, but for the first time, Ben felt its magic in his bones. A reminder that even small gestures, done with love, could echo far beyond what anyone imagined. The day had softened into late afternoon, and early November sunlight stretched long, golden fingers across Hollow Creek. The chill in the air was sharper now, but not unpleasant, more like a gentle reminder that the season was shifting, and change was inevitable. Ben walked slowly along the creek, leaves crunching beneath his boots. The water shimmered in the soft sunlight, carrying small clusters of gold and red leaves downstream. Smoke from chimneys curled lazily into the sky, and the distant sound of the town clock chiming 3:17 resonated faintly through the crisp air. The pocket watch, safe in its case, no longer moved backward. Its rhythm was steady and forward, like a quiet heartbeat keeping time with the world around him. Ben paused and gazed at the creek, remembering the first morning he had found it, how it had glinted in the water, how its backward ticking had filled him with curiosity and wonder. He thought of Edwin Ward, of Clara, of his grandfather, and of the small acts of kindness that had moved time forward in their own way. "Guess you did it, Mr. Ward," he whispered, a small smile tugging at his lips. "You turned time the only way that mattered." The wind rustled the remaining leaves in the trees, sending a cascade of gold drifting down around him. A flock of birds wheeled in the sky, their calls echoing faintly over the water. Ben felt a sense of peace settle over him, the ache of missing his father easing just enough to make room for warmth and hope. He continued walking, letting the quiet of the creek and the brilliance of early November wrap around him. Every leaf, every gust of wind, every ripple of water felt alive, as if the town itself had been reminded of the importance of care, of connection, of love. And for the first time, Ben realized that this was what Edwin Ward had meant all along, that time wasn't something to control or reverse. Time was something to live in, to fill with meaningful moments, with acts of kindness and love that would ripple outward long after the moment had passed. The sun dipped lower behind the distant hills, casting the creek in a warm, golden glow. Ben took a deep breath, feeling the crisp November air fill his lungs. He knew the watch would keep ticking, that the town would carry forward the lessons of Edwin Ward, and that he himself would never forget the quiet magic of this month, these days, and the heartbeat of kindness he had discovered. Ben smiled, the pocket watch ticking steadily in his pocket, and with each forward tick, he felt the world shift, not backward, not frozen, but moving steadily, beautifully, forward. Early November had never felt more alive. If you enjoyed wandering Hollow Creek with Ben and discovering the magic of kindness, hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss a story full of heart, mystery, and a little November magic.